As Iranian weapons were used in the attack on its oil facilities. The energy minister says investigation revealed that the weapons didn't take off from Yemen as claimed by the Houthi rebels. Esther Omokbariola has more.
The oil facilities attacked on Saturday has sparked a series of condemnation from the international community, with concerns that this might affect global oil prices. Saudi Arabia's energy minister says the attacks cut down crude oil production by 5% and Iran was responsible.
Initial investigation indicates that the weapons used in the attack are Iranian. The result of the investigation will be immediately made public once they are complete. The drones did not, like what the Houthis claimed, take off from Yemen. The Houthis is merely a tool in the hands of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It is what they use to realize their goal and agenda in the region.
Well, they haven't risen very much, and we have these.
In the meantime, President Donald Trump says the oil attack won't affect the United States and has ordered the release of its crude reserves to cut down on the soaring oil prices.
Well, they haven't risen very much, and we have these strategic oil reserves, which are massive, and we can release a little bit of that. And other countries, including Bahrain, but other countries can be a little bit more generous with the oil, and you'd bring it right down. So, no, that's not a problem. It went up $5, and that is not a problem. And the Saudis want very much for us to protect them, but I say, well, we have to work. That was an attack on Saudi Arabia, and that wasn't an attack on us. But we would certainly help them. They've been a great ally. They spend $400 billion in our country over the last number of years. $400 billion. That's 1.5 million jobs. And they're not ones that, unlike some countries, where they want terms. They want terms and conditions. They want to say, can we borrow the money at 0% for the next 400 years? No. No, Saudi Arabia pays cash.
Saudi Aramco's operation says it might take months for oil production to return to normal. Iran has rejected charges it was to blame for the attacks, saying the strikes were carried out by Yemen, retaliating the Saudi-led military coalition war with Yemen's Houthi movement. Esther Mokwariola, TVC News.
Meanwhile, Russia says there is enough oil in global stockpiles to replace barrels Saudi Arabia temporarily lost due to attacks on its oil facilities. Energy Minister in Russia, Alexander Novak, says the world has enough commercial stockpiles to cover the shortage in the midterm. Mr. Novak adds that Russia is sticking to its commitments under the global oil production deal, and it was premature to talk about any possible changes to production levels. While Saudi Arabia, the United States and China have hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in strategic storage. The International Energy Agency, which coordinates energy policies of industrialized nations, advises all members to keep the equivalent of 90 days of net oil imports in storage. Let's bring in now global affairs analyst based in Washington, D.C., the U.S., Calvin Dark. It's good to have you join in at this time. It's been said that these attacks on Saudi oil installations were done with accurate precision. Are you clear now as to the intention of these attacks? What were these attacks actually meant to achieve?
Well, I think that now, as many people are coming to an agreement that these attacks were based in Iran, I think that the purpose behind them was, one, from the Iranian point of view, I think that they believe this will help them kind of restart negotiations on the Iran nuclear deal, either with the U.S. included or with European partners. And unfortunately, I think that this event is being used by more hawkish U.S. foreign policy makers to have an excuse to confront Iran or take that conflict to the next level. This is particularly important with the timing of the UN General Assembly coming up in the next couple of days and weeks here in the United States.
Right, and Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, has also said as much, that now might just be the best time to go back to that deal you just mentioned. But going by what you've also said now, are you also convinced that this was the Iranians at work, not the Houthi rebels?
Well, I think that's a very legitimate question. And one of the things that I think the Trump administration is seeing now is they lack credibility with the United States and with our partners. And we all know, not just this administration, but there have been past U.S. administrations that made dubious claims for getting into international conflicts. So you add to that the lack of credibility that the Trump administration has. We don't really know who to believe. And what we are pretty sure of, which the White House won't confirm, is that this was in some way either directed by Iran or by Iran's proxies in the region. But either way, it's going to be a really hard obstacle to get over this lack of credibility by the White House.
And if the aim was, what you just said now, is the result also being the same as anticipated, since Russia has said it's not exactly disturbed by the disruption, neither is the U.S. So do you think these results now of the attacks now are commensurate with what the attackers intended?
Well, I think if their intent was to use leverage, to give Iran leverage in the potential upcoming negotiations, either with the United States, which the White House saying is not going to take place now, or with Europe that will be taking place, I think if that was their intent to gain leverage, they got a little bit of it. But I also think that the United States in particular is being very careful to downplay this. Yesterday, Donald Trump basically said this wasn't even a big deal because we have our reserves. We are, self-sufficient as far as energy is concerned. But even he knows that even if we're self-sufficient energy-wise, this affects the world markets, which affects the United States. But I think they're trying to downplay it to not give it the emphasis that it could have had.
All right, Calvin Dark, thank you so much for your contributions on TVC News at this time.